Hi, how's it going? I'm Ben, and I'm making a better journaling app. Last week, I went wild camping. I had a great time. People should go outside more. But what does that have to do with a journaling app? Well, let me tell you a story. Actually, this story is about how difficult it is to tell stories. See, when I got back, people asked me how the trip went, and they asked for photos. I shared photos, but telling the story of exactly how it went was not as easy as I thought it would be. I tried to explain how nice it was to have a hot chocolate at the end of the day of a grueling hike in the cold, and you just sit down next to your small stove, and how sweet it was even though it was with water, not even milk. I tried to explain how scary it was when we were walking in this certain path and there was just a cliff right beside us the whole time. And I tried to explain how nice it felt to feel so small at the summit looking around at this huge, expansive landscape. And that latter one's really rare for me because I'm 6'3". See, as much as I relied on those photos to tell the story, sure, they gave the image of where we were, an image of the summit, they gave an image of the campsite, but they didn't contain the feelings or the emotions that we were experiencing at the time. And I could feel myself missing and trying to justify the gaps in between that I didn't take any photos on, my face for every single moment, for example. But do you know what did help tell a story? This cool rock. See, this rock is not like the other rocks. The other ones were jagged and mostly the same color. This one is round, bean-shaped, purple, and it has this lovely white, speckled, spotted effect to it that I don't know how much is coming across in camera. I found this rock at the bottom of the scary part, and it felt like it was waiting for me, like a trophy for having gotten through that part of the hike. And having this trophy with me to be able to tell that story completed it. And so when telling that story about this rock, all I could think of in the back of my mind was, I wish I'd collected more cool rocks. And so I did. Now I'll leave these rocks just over to the side here. And obviously you can tell that they're not like the other rocks. They look a bit different. They're more colorful, have more distinct shapes. Well, I made these rocks in my journaling app, Amulet, that I'm building. If you're new here, Amulet is a journaling app about expressing yourself first and describing it later. You customize your amulet, this clay-like, colorful shape, and then you describe it afterwards. Why is it this shape? Why is it this color? And throughout my camping trip, at certain moments that felt special or different or worth noting as part of this story, I opened my phone. Yes, I know, phone in the wild. But I opened my phone and I made an amulet for myself, and I added a few notes to it. See, originally my idea was to just have the amulet throughout the hike, to have some good material to talk about today. But more so, with the rock story, I realized that they are part of telling the story as well. These kind of logs, they helped me mark certain moments of this trip. And in that way, they helped me preserve the narrative, or even create a new narrative when I was telling the story again. Now, given that the week was shorter, because of the camping trip, I knew I wasn't going to get any development done, so instead I sat down to do some design work. I opened Figma, I threw my amulets in with the entries, and I figured I'd play around with some ideas on how exactly I might be able to create a journal that feels like it's telling a story, and one where these cool rocks really are at the centerpiece of the storytelling. Now, I made a few different types. Obviously, I created a basic kind of social media list kind of view because I feel like I needed a base to compare the other ones to. This was probably going to be there anyway, just for simplicity's sake and for accessibility. But I wanted ways to see your whole day differently, or the way that you could relive your day differently. I started with this scattered view where the amulets really come into the forefront. There's no text anywhere. This, as you see it, was my day. And I figured if you tap on one of these, you could open up the entry and get a bit more information. And I figured you could also even add a photo that captures that particular moment. But this one felt a bit unstructured. At the end of the day, there was a story being told, and stories have a beginning and an end and moments in between. So I wanted to make something that feels a little bit more like a timeline. So I created this next timeline, one where, once again, the amulets are highlighted and the text is secondary to it as well. You can still have an image, but it's really the focal point is being able to tell that story around my cool rocks. And whilst this definitely helped tell the story, I felt like there was a little bit more I can do with this. I really like this timeline view, so I played around with a bit more. And I made this spiral or circle that kind of takes you from the beginning of the day to the end of the day. And perhaps you could keep spinning on it and it would go to the next day and the next day. But this one felt a bit convoluted, and I figured maybe I'll come back to it as more of an exploratory view down the line. And then lastly, I was thinking, these are quite difficult to share with people. And I figured the photos are the most obvious thing to share, so I was wondering, could I make it feel like a bit of a scrapbook page? And so I created this one where there's an image in the background, and the amulets are like stickers that you can place in various different spots. Here I put the orange amulet halfway up the ridge walk. As I wrote it, we'd been walking up directly for 2.5 hours, and the green is somewhat more towards the summit, which is when I created that one. I figured this scrapbook-like quality really was unique to how digital journaling can be different and perhaps better than physical journaling in some ways. And I thought you could probably replace this image for a drawing or maybe some custom templates, and then it can be even more expressive. I'm going to be implementing these over the next week because I really do feel that one of the important parts of journaling is that it's not just something that you write down once and then never return to, but it's supposed to be something that you can revisit. And much like when we were camping, when we got lost, we rewrote the narrative that we were actually exploring. These types of views help with that sense of exploration. See, as I mentioned earlier, the point behind these views was to take these amulets as cool rocks. They themselves don't hold any meaning on their own if you just leave them scattered around. But if you put them in the right shape, then they start looking like something, and that something then has a story to tell. Something that physical journals I find struggle with is exactly that exploration and long-term storytelling. I think digital journals have an advantage here, and I want those principles and values to be central to Amulet. That's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed. I once again leave you with the outro song. I invite you to get off the platform and go listen to it, stare at a wall, maybe put it on and go outside and find a cool rock. And with that, I'll see you next time.